Cast of Blithe Spirit, we're grateful to have you here today. The No Coward play will open a week from tomorrow night in the theater, and so we look forward to that. Hope you all will come and see the piece. Thanks also to Christian Boy and all of you for inviting us into the insights and offering insights into the show and inviting some conversation about that today. So I'll turn it over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Pastor. So, 1941, Blithe Spirit, it's a Noel Coward comedy. It's a farce. The play is about the author, Charles Condamine, who is working on his next project, which involves a seance. And so he invites a seer to the house for a dinner party so he can do some research. And he inadvertently ends up summoning the ghost of his dead wife. His current wife is not happy about this. By a strange twist of fate, his current wife also dies in the course of the play. So Charles Condamine has to deal with two spectral wives under the same roof. I can't tell you more about the play without ruining the comedic effect that waits for you next week when you come to see it. But when we started talking about coming to chapel and having conversations, how do you have serious intellectual conversations about something that on its surface is completely inconsequential? And then we started talking about ghosts and what these mean to us, right? And what are ghosts? What is the afterlife? And how is this at all funny? Some of our ancient texts, our earliest texts, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, lays out for us that the afterlife, these ghosts, are exact reproductions of our corporal earthly bodies, including the clothes we wear and how we look, right? And so even in the ancient times, we liked our mysteries to be solved for us, and we liked our theology to be literal. Human nature likes this. We don't grapple well with the mystery. We want an answer. My mother does not want to be cremated because when the time comes for her bones to rise up, she wants them all in one place, right? She's a literalist about these things, and there's a little bit of that in all of us. So what do we do with the unknown? Like the Egyptians, I don't want a metaphor. What is the kingdom of heaven? What are these streets paved with gold? I want to know where they are. I want a better description. I want an address so I can Google map it. Right? Somewhere between the Sunday school felt board and graduate school, we come up with this idea that our dead loved ones are much like these Egyptian spirits. They're watching over us, and they have responsibility for us, preventing and protecting. They become kind of like Santa Claus. Somewhere between biblical times and the Renaissance, these extraterrestrials go somewhere from terrifying, multi-winged, multi-eyed creatures who announce themselves by saying, "Be not afraid," to pink babies with wings. So what do we do with the unknown? Playwrights and storytellers reflect and feed culture. And when they deal with the unknown, they either demonize it or they ridicule it. They have to turn it into a monster or a clown. The faith of our ancestors, the color of our skin, our sexual orientation, fear of the unknown. What storytellers and culture do with these unknown things is demonize it or ridicule it. They turn it into a bumbling moneylender or a shrewd world domineer, a violent predator or a minstrel, a sexual deviant or a sissy, a ghoul in chains or Casper the Friendly Ghost. And if we take that further into this idea of this protector ghost, a dead grandpa keeping you from crashing your car, or grandma getting you out of the house before it burns down. Somehow that's become part of our cultural idea of what happens to what ghosts do. Noel Coward chooses the clown. He doesn't choose to sort out theological solutions for us, or to solve mysteries, but to lighten our mood. And I like that. And I hope you do too next week. Because if the afterlife for me involves the awareness of the world, loved ones, being able, aware and watching loved ones suffer at their loss, or strangers who are starving or shivering, and it's either my job to fix it or sit with my hands tied, but I'm still aware of it. If that's the afterlife, it doesn't sound very much like heaven to me. It sounds like going the other way. And so I've asked the cast to talk to you, to talk to each other and to us in this conversation of what did they used to think the afterlife is, what were they taught, and what do they believe now? And what is our relationship with ghosts? I have no idea what they're going to say. None whatsoever. So, two of our cast members are student teaching, and they are two of our leads. We couldn't do a single scene for you because there's not a page of this play without these two people on it. We couldn't do 4 lines without them. But, so the rest of the cast is here. I'll let them introduce themselves and talk as they want to. So do you want to start on that end?
Hi. Okay. My name is Rachel, Rachel Hogan, and I am playing Elvira, the first wife, the dead wife. And I guess when I started to kind of contemplate how you play a dead person, it got me thinking, why does she come back? And I think on the surface, she's not a very nice person, and she's very mischievous, to put it in the least, and is up to no good, it seems, when you look at it at first. But I think she comes back because she loves Charles so much. And that kind of brings up an interesting point to me in my own life, and my own faith experiences. When I was in 9th grade, and this kind of connects to what Christian was talking about grandmas and grandpas and stuff like that. My grandma passed away, and as a 9th grader, you're struggling with a lot of different emotions and things that are changing, and what's my purpose, and I don't understand what's happening to me and my body, and who am I, and when she passed away, I took it really, really hardly because I blamed myself for a couple of things. I was the last one to wake up when we were going to visit her, so it was my fault because I could have had left 5 more minutes with her. And I was the one to take the phone call of, she's not coming back, what do you want me to do? And so it was an interesting conversation to reflect on now, because later that week when we had started kind of planning the funeral process, on a whim, I went to Barnes & Noble and picked up Les Miserables because I wanted to distract myself with an 800-page novel, because who wouldn't? That's an insight to the nerdy little 9th grader that I was. But I started reading it, and I came across a quote that was, "Be careful how you think of the dead. Look not on earth, but look to the glory of the heights of heaven, and you will see your beloved." And a lot of people would consider that a God moment, and I do consider that a God moment. However, I also think that there's more to it. To me, that was a grandma moment too. And I think that concept of coming back for the ones you love is a really interesting one. And this talk is going to kind of go in circles because I don't have the answers, and I think it's important to ask the questions of, what is the difference between a guardian angel and a spirit? I guess for me, a spirit is somebody, I hadn't really thought of my grandma as a spirit, I guess, because she's my grandma. And so it's an interesting kind of dynamic between the two, because spirit sounds scary versus guardian angel sounds welcoming. And I think that it's the difference of who you know and how you go about it. And yeah, I guess that's what I have to say about that. So now on to John.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm John. I wrote it down because I knew if I came up here without a sheet of paper, my mind would go blank, so bear with me. I'm Jonathan Wells. I play Dr. Bradman, a friend of the couple who are absent. A few days ago, I was faced with the challenge of coming up with something to say about the afterlife, both from my perspective and that of my character in Blithe Spirit. This is not a topic that I spend a lot of time thinking about, to be honest, because it's scary. There is so much unknown and fear about it that I would much rather stress myself out about something else, like any of the homework assignments I have yet to deal with. In the case of Dr. Bradman, my character from the show, this assignment was kind of a stretch. The Bradmans are, to be polite, kind of vanilla. Not to mention they have about 20 minutes of stage time. They are not especially engaging, exciting, or really entertaining on a personal level. This is not to say that the show is bland. They're really great on stage, make for great comedy, so definitely still come see it. Anyway, the Bradmans never really have any run-ins with the spirit of the show and make few comments on them aside from a few passing jokes. While the hocus pocus seems to them to be something to laugh about, I believe the spirit world or the afterlife is something that they take very seriously. They are good people of a routine, and being church-going citizens is part of that. Not a lot is brought into question, and they are comfortable with their pleasant reality. This is not the case for me. I have no idea what I'm talking about. This is not something that I have much knowledge about or really any kind of credibility to be speaking about right now. The thought of the afterlife is so mysterious and foreboding that I rarely dwell on the subject too much. I'm usually pretty quick to change the topic or deflect the conversation because it's intimidating. What happens to us when we die? How am I supposed to know? No one seems to be able to tell me exactly what will happen because when it does happen, it's kind of a done deal. Where does my spirit go? Will it come back like we see in Blithe Spirit? Will I get to see all my dead pets like my parents promised when I was a kid? I don't know. So many questions. It sometimes seems to me that the afterlife is something that is earned by the way you behave yourself on earth, and that if you aren't good enough, you may be condemned to a different, but also mysterious and way less fun eternity. Again, I don't know. All I know is that the only thing I'm certain of is that I'm here, and I'm here right now. And I don't know what the future holds for me in this life or otherwise. And all I can do is make it count and take every opportunity I'm given. And the rest is out of my hands.
Thank you, Jonathan. I suppose, well, here's what I think. I grew up in a Catholic community, and we were always raised in Catholic school to believe that good people go to heaven and bad people go to hell. And then I got to high school, and then I got to college, and it became very aware to me that it doesn't seem fair that there is a place for good people and a place for bad people, that there has to be a place where people can be forgiven of these sins that they have, or a place where people can just find peace and happiness. And I suppose for me, I want peace and happiness after I die, whether that comes from looking after my relative, looking after my family and my friends after I pass on. It's just, for me, I'm going to need that sense of I have done what I need to do, I have been where I need to be, I have been with who I need to be, so I'm done now. This is my peaceful place. When I was in high school, when I was a senior in high school, we had a good family friend of ours pass away. And that was my first experience with death. And all I could think about is, what happens now? Where is this person's soul? Where is this person's spirit? And it was then that I realized that they deserved nothing but good things. And I guess to sort of finish off my opinion on this, I think for me the afterworld is a place where people can find, no matter what you've done, people can find a sense of happiness and a place of well-being and a place to just rest and be done with the stressful life that we have. So that's my opinion.
Well, I am Christy Coleman, and I play Edith the maid in the show. And kind of going in a little bit of a different direction, Colette and Rachel both said they had death experiences, well, experiences with death, later in their life. And the first time I experienced death was I was in second grade, and that was with my grandpa. And that was a hard time because first death. Also, I didn't know what the heck was going on. I walked into the room and all of a sudden, hey, dead grandpa, and didn't know how to deal with that, but I was pretty much traumatized as a second grader. And then 3 weeks later, my grandma died. And she just couldn't live without grandpa. It was always Ginny and Fabian. Ginny and Fabian couldn't be Ginny. And so from a young age, I'm like, okay, they're gone, now what? And so with today's youth, I'll say, or everybody, there's this phenomena of just everything about the afterlife, like the TLC show Long Island Medium. Okay, people want to know, like, are they out there? Can I talk to them? And they have this obsession with knowing what's going on. And so by having that, like, pseudo, I can't think of the word, but having that availability to watch somebody else experience them being able to talk to a loved one who has passed on, you feel better about yourself. And so kind of watching that, it has made me rethink about the experience as a young child going through death and seeing that, hey, you weren't doing that bad. It wasn't awful. And so thinking about the afterlife in that sense, like there's something out there. Can you talk to them? Maybe not. If you don't believe that, maybe not. But that there is something out there that you can believe in and say, hey, they're watching over me.
Good morning. My name is Lauren Veit, and I play Mrs. Bradman, Dr. Bradman's wife, and they are the skeptics of the show. They are very sure of what they believe, and they're very comfortable with what they believe, and they hold on to it the entire show. And when Christian told us to reflect on our personal beliefs in reference to our characters, I realized just how different I am from Mrs. Bradman, and I think it was kind of a really interesting thought experiment because we're kind of two very separate ends of the spectrum. My own personal faith journey has been very turbulent. I lost all 4 grandparents when I was very young, and it was always prevalent in my life. What is the afterlife? What do I believe about it? And I've always been very comfortable saying, I don't know. I have no idea. Whereas Mrs. Bradman, all of these crazy things start happening in this house, and her reaction, her immediate reaction is, oh, what a crazy random happenstance. This is not what I believe, so that's not what's going on. And I think while there's a definite comedic aspect to that, part of it is also admirable. And I think part of that is something that we all have in our lives and something we need in our lives to say, this is what I believe, I accept that, I hold strongly to that. And one thing that I really thought about coming into speaking to you today was if you asked Mrs. Bradman what she believed, she would be 100% sure. And if you asked me what I believe, I have no idea. And I would say, I'm still exploring, I'm still learning, I don't know yet. And I think something that's really important to do as humans is to find that line of discovering personal belief and questioning. When do you question what you believe, and when do you own what you believe? And I think that's something that I at first didn't really see in this show, but coming into this today, I really discovered. So just going into the rest of the day, maybe keep on your mind if you want. I hope I'm bringing some thoughts here, but hopefully this is meaning something. But when do we discover, when do we question, and when do we hold true to what we know?
Thank you. Anyone would like to share or comment on anything that we've said, or
I'll share my microphone.
Oh, it wasn't that bad.
I'm curious, as you talk communal stories. I mean, stories are true, and they are ours. As this, in some ways, this show is true for the person that wrote it, and it becomes part of your story as you direct it. Where does story fit in terms of the mystery and the certainty of?
well, I can preface that by saying, I can preface my attempt at an answer by saying that as a theater goer and as a storyteller, I have what almost could be described as very pedestrian tastes. I want one of 3 things: make me laugh, make me cry, or make me think. I don't need to go further than that. And so in this case, I had to grapple with, how do we deal with this being a farce? I don't have any doors to slam in this show, right? There are all of those elements that I think belong in a farce. Well, they're there, except the physical comedy aspect of the farce, or the unbelievable situation that is set up by mistaken identities and 7-bedroom doors and mismatched couples. All of that's being replaced by the ghosts, one, and then two, that only some people can see and some people can't. So we have both that unusual situation of a ghost that's on stage, and then the mistaken identities are the place is taken by who can see them and who can't. And that actually has been the real work for the actors, is figuring out how to portray in storytelling this miscommunication. Someone's talking to a ghost, but the person who can't see the ghost then thinks they're talking to them. So in terms of exploring character and sharing that experience on stage, is we have actors on stage who aren't sharing the stage with everybody. So it's an ensemble show, but it can't be an ensemble show. There are people on stage who have to live their character lives without anyone reacting to them. These are moments of quiet desperation for these actors. Wait, I'm talking, no one's laughing, because they can't see them. I have absolutely no idea where I was going, and I know you asked me a much better question than I was talking about.
Christian,
Yes.
I'm struck by the occasion of the theater. I have this rather tiresome little lecture about the importance of occasions. I'm not going to give it now, but I think chapel is an occasion. Things can happen here in the way that things can happen in a concert or in particular settings. And theater seems to me is an occasion where the kind of things that we've just been hearing can happen. They can happen elsewhere, but they can happen in the theater. There's a long history of this. But I'm struck by the fact that the very beginnings of theater in the West raised these questions. At least if I remember, if I go through the closet of my graduate school memories, theater in the West in many ways began in the church. And it began with what would have been called mystery plays. And among the first of those would be an enactment of the women coming to the tomb of Jesus and saying, and there's someone there, one of those be not afraid guys that you talked about. And they arrive, and that spirit, whatever it is, says, whom do you seek? And the answer is, he is not here. He is not here, he is risen. And so it seems to me that there's a really interesting continuity between what theater has meant in our culture for hundreds and hundreds of years and the mystery that all of the cast have been talking about here. It's not like it's something that just popped up in 1941, but it's been around for a long time.
Well, and that theater of the early church, the mystery plays and the cycle plays, is so reflective of the origins of the ancient theater. Aristotle talks about he offers up three theories in the Poetics of the origins of theater. Ritual, storytelling, and something he called the play instinct. That ritual, and all of these things seek to answer questions. Everything we do on the stage is grappling with, how do we find an answer to some question, right? And whether that being ritual, sharing that story, sharing a common belief through ritual, and that's the most effective way. And even after the early church banned theater, within about a hot minute they brought it back because they realized it was the most powerful tool for evangelism, right? Whether that being a mystery play or a stained glass window or the Stations of the Cross, but that going through the motions of that ritual, and storytelling. How do we share our stories? It's the Sunday school felt board. how do we tell the little ones what we believe? How do we bring them along? I think my first role, and for many of us, our first roles on the stage were actually on the steps of the altar wearing a bathrobe, right? And if you were Lutheran, you did it in December. If you were Episcopalian, you did it in January, like you're supposed to. But there is that aspect of storytelling, and I think the most fascinating of these is the play instinct. I love that I gave this on a test years and years ago, and I've never forgotten that a student had taken notes poorly and then shared those notes, and I got lots of answers on this test that said the plague instinct. And then they had to explain it, and so somebody came up with, well, once somebody got it, it just kept spreading. But the play instinct, what is it like? It's not just telling a story, but then becoming a character. Who was Og and Zook, who put on the lion's skin and said, the hunt didn't just happen, here's how it happened, and now I am the lion. And it's ways for us as community to come together and solve mysteries. In a temporal way, in a corporal way, in an ethereal way, ways for us to come together in community. How do we grapple with the afterlife? What's waiting for us? What is it? What's the difference between an angel and a spirit and a ghost? What's waiting for me? There are ways for us to process, and sometimes the only way we can process it is to laugh at it. It's the safest way in community. The stage is safe. This room is safe. The college is safe. There are much safer ways to grapple with the unknown than what waits for us out beyond those gates and beyond these hallowed walls. There's a safe way to gather in community and ask questions and to share in our ritual and to tell each other stories and to explore that instinct that's in all of us to play. Thank you.
Life together. Ellie and I had a great conversation with Kristen about this today. You obviously have had great conversations as you've staged this. Again, you're invited next weekend to come and continue the conversation as we watch this being played out in our midst. We thank you so much for being a part of this life together and for what you did for us today. A moment of sending. Percy Bysshe Shelley has written a poem called To a Lark, which actually inspired the naming of this play. It goes like this. Hail to thee, blithe spirit, bird thou never wert, that from heaven or near it pourest thy full heart in profuse strains of unpremeditated art. Higher still and higher from the earth thou springest, like a cloud of fire, the blue deep thou wingest, and singing still dost soar, and soaring ever singest. Let's